Hey guys, welcome to Gay for Ghosts. I'm your host, Adam Holshoe of Miskatonic Paranormal Radio, and I'd like to say thanks a lot for checking out my video blog. This is the very first episode, and so what I plan on doing with this episode is I'm probably just going to give like a really quick introduction and talk about what I want to do with the show and why I'm doing the show, and then I'm going to move right into the first episode because I don't want these things to last too long. I want to keep them between like 5 to 10 minutes at the most. This one will probably be closer to 10 minutes because of the intro. But yeah, so I do a paranormal radio show, miskatonicparanormal.com. You can go check out the show. And we basically talk about the paranormal. So you're probably asking yourself, well, if you have a blog or a podcast, you know, and a radio show, why are you doing a video blog? Isn't that kind of redundant? Well, you know, the radio show is awesome. I love it. And if you guys check it out, I think you'll like it too. But I don't really have a chance to talk as much as I would like on the show because we have like 4 hosts and we also interview guests and stuff like that. So with this, I can just come on here and blab about whatever I want for like 5 or 10 minutes. And I can get into the more philosophical things and ideas that I have about ghost hunting without any interruptions. So that's why I'm doing it. And then kind of a secondary reason why is I want to make it easier for beginners to get into ghost hunting, or like kind of like give beginners tips, because a lot of people, when I tell them I'm a ghost hunter, you know, well, first of all, I'll get crazy looks, but you know, a lot of times people will be like, wow, that's super cool, but I don't even know how I would get started into doing something like that. I don't even know how to begin or what I would do. And so it's, you know, it's not as hard as a lot of people think, and so I'm just gonna kind of give a breakdown about cool little tips that you can use and things that you can do. And the first 5 episodes will probably actually just be like a toolbox, you know, just like the very fundamentals of ghost hunting. And this episode is just going to touch on that as well. Actually, this episode is just the most basic things. Probably pretty much like a to-do list, or like to-do or not to do on ghost hunting. So I'm just going to move right on into that list right now. So the first thing that you should do when you go ghost hunting is don't go alone. Always make sure that you have somebody with you. And the reason why is it's kind of a safety issue. You know, like you don't want to be out in a remote location and like get hurt or get into a bad situation and not have someone else there to help you. So that's, you know, that's the most important reason why. But another reason why is people can help to confirm any kind of evidence that you gather. They can, you know, like if you're out and you're alone and you hear something, you might start to wonder if it was just like an audio hallucination or if your mind is playing tricks on you. But if you have someone there to confirm that they heard what you heard, it helps a lot. So yeah, definitely don't go out alone. Next thing is always bring a flashlight. I know it sounds totally rudimentary and fundamental, almost like I shouldn't even need to mention it, but I've actually been on hunts when people haven't brought a flashlight, and it really sucks for them, you know, because you need to be able to see, and like if something falls, you need to be able to look over at it and like check it out and see what it was. And I mean, it's just good to be able to navigate around in the dark with a flashlight in general. Like you don't want to get hurt like tripping over something or whatever. So yeah, always bring a flashlight. Next thing is, you should always do equipment checks on your equipment before you show up. So, don't get me wrong, I don't want you to get the impression that you have to have a lot of equipment to be a ghost hunter. You don't. In fact, the only thing you really need is a flashlight. Over time, you'll probably start to acquire a lot more equipment if you like ghost hunting. I know that's kind of what happened to me, but really all you need is a flashlight. But even if the only piece of equipment you have is a flashlight, you should test it and make sure that it's working great before you go out. And that can be said with all of your equipment. I can't say how much of a bummer it is to, you know, show up at a location and then not be able to fully investigate because you didn't check your equipment to make sure it was all working. So yeah, just make sure you check it all before you go. I suggest checking it like a day before, and then also like, you know, an hour before, because a day before you can go out and replace it or get it fixed or whatever you need to do. So the next thing is batteries. Kind of goes along with the equipment checking because, you know, you got to make sure you have enough batteries for all the equipment. But I think that you should always just get fresh batteries and have about 4 times more batteries than what you think you're going to actually use. And the reason why I say fresh batteries is because a lot of times when paranormal investigators are out investigating an area, they report batteries being drained, like right before a lot of paranormal activity occurs. And one of the theories behind this is that ghosts are actually drawing energy out of the electronics. And so the electronics are using a lot more battery power to try to sustain themselves while this energy is being drawn out. Well, you know, if you have fresh batteries and you show up and you, like, you know, your equipment dies after 15 minutes, then you know it could be a good clue that something may happen, and you can kind of be more vigilant and, you know, check it out, make sure that you're paying more attention or whatever. But if you show up and your batteries are gone in 15 minutes and they're not fresh, you may just have the thought in your mind, well, you know, they were dead, or they were dying, or I used a lot last time, or whatever. So I think you should just always use fresh batteries. Okay, so we got the batteries. Oh, next thing. This is really important too. Research. Research, I think, is actually like 50% of the ghost hunt. And a lot of people are probably like shaking their heads right now, like, what, you know? But let me explain. If you go to a location, like let's say you hear a bar is haunted, and you go and you investigate the bar, but you don't do any research beforehand, like you don't do find out any history about the bar, or you don't do any interviews, it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. I mean, you might get some good evidence out of there, but more than likely you're not going to find too much. But if you go and you do a lot of research about a place, you can find out all sorts of really cool things. Like, you can find out if the stories that you've heard about the place are true. You know, if people had lived there and died, what were their names? Because you can use their names in EVP sessions. You can say, is Tom here? Or did you know Tom? You can do things like that. And so that can help your EVP quite a bit. EVP, by the way, stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon, and I'm going to do like a whole episode on that, so if you're kind of wondering what is that, you can always Google search it, and you'll find plenty of stuff, but I'm also going to talk about it in later episodes. And another really cool thing about the research is the interviews, because, you know, you can go ahead and interview people and they'll have all sorts of stories to tell you. Like, you know, for instance, let's go back to the bar scenario. If you show up before you do the investigation, like before they close, and have a couple of drinks, talk to the bartender or whatever, a lot of times they'll have really cool stories that they can tell you about, and they can tell you about where to keep your eyes on. Like, you know, they might say, oh, well, you know, we've seen bottles of wine fall out of this spot like a bunch of times on their own. And so you can use that not only to investigate, you know, but you can also use it to debunk, to try to figure out whether or not it is true, you know, like, hey, maybe there's like a loose wine rack there. And so when people are walking by it, it's kind of knocking it more and more loose, and then eventually the bottle just falls on their own, and they think it's a ghost, but in all actuality, it was just this loose wine rack. So that's another reason why the research and the interviews are important. Next thing is, always get permission to go hunting wherever you're hunting. Like, never ever trespass. That's so dangerous. Like, you could, I mean, you know, you could end up in jail, or you could even maybe get hurt. Like, if you show up to a location where you're not supposed to be and there's someone there and they have a gun or whatever, I mean, you know, it's just a bad situation to be in. So you should always get permission before you go somewhere. And it's cool, when you get permission, you can kind of do some of the research at that time too, because you can ask them about the stories when you're getting permission. And a lot of times, if a place is notoriously haunted, people will be more than happy to not only let you investigate, but to tell you all the stories that they have about it too. So yeah, never trespass. I can't stress that enough. It's almost just as important as, you know, going in groups. Finally, the last thing that I think is really important is having fun and showing emotions when you're on a hunt. I've hunted with some groups before where you show up and people are kind of like, they're not excited about it. They don't seem like they're having fun. They're almost robotic, like when they're asking questions, like when they're trying to get spirits to answer or whatever, you know, they're like, do you know what year it is? What's your name? I mean, that's like totally boring. I mean, like, not only is it like boring just like for the people in the group or whatever, but it doesn't seem like they're having much fun doing it. And think about it. I mean, if you're looking for ghosts are what? most of them are spirits of dead people, right? So they were human at once too. And I mean, people react more to someone who's warm and having fun and showing emotions than someone who's just like a dead robot asking them stupid questions. So never be afraid also to ask any kind of questions that come into your mind, even if they may seem a little zany or fun or outside of the box or even a little bit provocative, you know? Don't ever be afraid to show emotions, and most importantly, have fun. With that said, I gotta wrap this up, but stay tuned for the next 5 episodes, especially if you're a beginner, because I'm going to talk a lot about the fundamentals of ghost hunting, how to collect evidence, some of the terms that you'll probably hear in ghost hunting, the equipment that we use, how to use it, how to look for evidence, and some of the methods that we use that have been really effective. And I'll probably even play some of the EVPs that I've captured for you too, so you can check them out. But until next time, I'm your host, Adam Holschuh, and I'd like to say thanks again for dropping by, and I'll see you again.